Gallipoli stands as one of the most famous military fiascos of all time. One man who played a part in bringing the campaign to an end was a young Australian war correspondent named Keith Murdoch.
Keith Murdoch came from a very well-connected family. His father's a minister. They play golf with Andrew Fisher, the Prime Minister. So Fisher advises Murdoch not to enlist at the outbreak of war, but to continue as a journalist. When the Australian Journalists Association is asked to select a journalist to go as an official correspondent, Keith Murdoch misses out to Charles Bean by 1 vote. But as the Gallipoli campaign continues and appears to bog down, Andrew Fisher wants an independent report on the Australians on Gallipoli, and he asks him to go and report on postal arrangements on Gallipoli. The British commander, Ian Hamilton, agrees, but says that the one thing Keith Murdoch must do is to respect the censorship regulations.
Murdoch spent 4 days in Gallipoli in September 1915 and met the chief war correspondents. It quickly became apparent that the campaign was an absolute disaster, and the English journalist Ellis Ashmead Bartlett asked Murdoch to take a letter detailing its failure to British Prime Minister Asquith. The letter never arrived. It was confiscated by a British Army officer at Marseille.
Murdoch is furious at this censorship, and he sits down and types his own 8,000-word letter in which he praises the Australian soldiers and he damns the British commanders for their incompetence. And he describes this as one of the most terrible chapters in our history.
The conceit and self-complacency of the red feather men are equalled only by their incapacity. Along the line of communications are countless high officers and conceited young cubs who are plainly only playing at war. What can you expect of men who have never worked seriously, who have lived for their appearance and for social distinction and self-satisfaction, and who are now called on to conduct a gigantic war?
Murdoch uses his contacts in Britain to get his letter to the attention of the British cabinet, which is bitterly split about the Dardanelles. And the opponents of the campaign use Murdoch's letter as a pretext to relieve Hamilton of his command. This turns Murdoch into a kingmaker, and he stays in London and uses his influence with the great and the powerful to build one of the biggest media empires the world has ever seen.
By successfully exposing the campaign as a disaster, Keith Murdoch became the first Australian in history to influence a world event.